Well, good morning. No, it wasn't frozen. That was just the thing there. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry that I'm a little late, but unfortunately, to use that term, it couldn't be helped. Um, Hope everybody's doing well. I think I am. I'm on the board of directors of a corporation that puts on two old-time music festivals in this area. We had a meeting last night. We have one of our festivals in 2 weeks, so didn't go late. And a lot of times these meetings just kind of wear me out. Some of y'all may know what I mean by that. So there you go. We got off subject again last week, yesterday. Yeah, last week. We got talking about manuscripts, manuscript evidence, things like that. The old manuscripts of the Old Testament, Hebrew, Septuagint. The Old Hebrew, which is kind of the Samaritan Pentateuch. And I started talking about the New Testament manuscripts, and the headgum computer went out on us. Well, the computer didn't. The internet didn't do us any good, did it? One thing I wanted to say about that, the New Testament manuscripts, there are two main strains. And the two main strains are Byzantine and Alexandrian. You can say what you want to about them. The majority of manuscripts are the Byzantine text type. That's the text type that's 90% maybe 95, 98% behind the King James Version of the Bible. The Alexandrian type, a smaller number, is what's the main text behind most modern translations. All right, you with me on that? The higher critics, in most instances, follow Westcott and Hort and say the Alexandrian text type manuscripts are better because they are older. We have older copies of them than we do the Byzantine text type. So older's got to be better. Brethren, we ain't dealing with wine here. Cat. Get back. Cat. We're not dealing with wine here. Older is not necessarily better. Older could mean more corrupt. Because we can read in the early church fathers where they said the heretics corrupted the text. Now we can also think, well, since in a lot of cases we don't know what these heretics really did or what these heretics really believed, we just know what one or two said about them. And it may be that they were keeping the text correct and our so-called fathers were corrupting it. I don't know. There's a lot to consider there. You know what I mean? We don't know. But you've got people that argue strenuously for the Textus Receptus or that type as the best text. You got people that argue for the Alexandrian text as the best text of the New Testament. I'm going to tell you the truth. There's a lot of little differences between them. But in reality, there's not that many great differences between them. By little, I mean it may use a present perfect instead of a straight present tense. Things of that nature. So there you go. That's my opinion on it. But if you're going to read a Greek New Testament, brother, which one are you going to read? Well, I got three that I use. Trinitarian Bible Society. That's the one of the text behind the King James Version, so to speak. I use the Nestle Aland. Yes, I've got that critical Greek text, absolutely. You know why? Because it's got all the variant readings down in footnotes in the bottom. So even if they said this ought to say thus and so, they put a footnote and said this manuscript, this one, and this one says it's something else. Tell you what that something else is. You can make your own decision. Now, if somebody said, well, now wait a minute, you can only have one. Oh, and I've got some older ones. I've got, like the emphatic diglot, and I've got can't think of his old name, Trigalis, and Westcott and Hort. I've got a bunch of them, but some of the one I use regularly. Somebody said, wait a minute now, forget all that mess. What if you could only have one? Real simple. The majority text. I want to know what the majority of manuscripts say. In the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. My opinion. That and $2.50 will buy you a cup of coffee at most places. Yeah, the majority text. Why not use it? There used to be at least two versions of that in print. I have no idea which one's better. I do know there are some differences between them, but I think the difference is confined more to the style of print and the footnotes. I think the text is about the same. About has to be if you're dealing with the majority. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion. All these manuscripts. Then you got all the papyri. You got all these things that have come to light in the last 100 years. Now, having said all that, I might as well just go ahead and seemingly contradict myself here. Are you ready? I believe this. And yes, I got Greek New Testaments, I got Greek lexicons, I got Greek concordances, I got all this stuff laying right here. You'll see why in a minute, I hope. If I have to go to the Greek or Hebrew, Masoretic text, Septuagint, Samaritan Pentateuch, critical New Testament text, Textus Receptus, if I have to go to the original languages to prove a doctrine, there's something wrong. If you can't prove your doctrine from an English translation of the Bible, you got a problem. And I'm going to go one step further. And I'm going to use two very basic examples. And if you want me to, we'll do this. Not today, because I don't have them all over here. Two very basic examples. Absolute predestination and unconditional election. They're two of the absolute basic foundational doctrines. If you can't take any translation of the Bible in English and prove those, now I'm talking about translation, not necessarily a paraphrase like the Living Bible or even Phillips's New Testament in the language. I can't remember what he called it. Phillips's paraphrase of the New Testament, anyway. Had a professor in college, professor of New Testament, who really liked that, and I bought one back in the day, and I hardly ever open it now. He really thought it was good. But you should be able to take any version of the Bible, the English translation, and prove those two doctrines from them, period. Period. And if you have to go to the Greek or Hebrew to get your doctrine out of it, you got a problem. And I'll give you another one. If you have to go to a specific English version of the Bible, I don't care which one it is. King James Version, New International, English Standard, whatever, to find your doctrine, you got a problem too, because it ought to be in all of them. Now, do you believe that? I tell you, I do. I do. I believe that. This looking at the original language can give you nuances to the usage of the writers of the New Testament or Old, but it best not give you something new and different doctrinally. Pardon me. You know what I'm saying? I think you do. I think everybody agrees with me on that. I hope you do anyway. Not that I think I'm the be all end all and of biblical interpretation, because I'm not. Far from it. I got a lot to learn too. But I know this if I know anything. Assuming, and I'm not saying it's right. Don't leave today saying Elder Lackey said all the new translations are instruments of Satan. I never said that and never will. Let me tell you something. God has placed in every one of them enough to instruct his children in what they need to know at the moment. That's at the moment for them, by the way, not at the moment for you and I, not at the moment for what somebody else wants, but for them. For them. They got enough. God's given it to them. Think about this. New believer just had his eyes opened. Got knowledge a little bit. Searching. Saying, Lord, teach me the way. Teach me the truth. Sitting there reading his Bible. Not the King James Version, the modern one. Let's say he's reading the New International. There he is. Boom. Reading the NIV, studying it. Rejoicing in what he's learning. Somebody comes up to him and said, boy, don't you know that's a book of Satan? Oh my goodness gracious, what's he supposed to think? That book where he's been being instructed in the mind of God in the way of Jesus Christ is a tool of Satan? Give me a break. Somebody comes up, he's going to shut you off because he knows better. Somebody come up to him and say, brother, looks to me like you're reading the Bible. I am. Why are you doing that? Well, it's God's book. And I'm seeking instruction. You believe Jesus is the Christ? I do. You believe he died for sinners? Yes. Well, you've been taught. God rules and reigns on high. Keep reading, brother. You're doing good. He may get to the point where he wants to compare it with a different version. Well and good. Instruct him in the way more perfectly. Just to attack the version he's using as a tool of Satan. Craziness. I'm serious. It's craziness. When the devil quoted scripture to Jesus, he quoted it correctly. The devil's not interested in corrupting the New Testament or the Old Testament, either one. He's interested in misusing what God wrote. I believe that. Well, what God inspired to be written. Let me rephrase that. He's a deceiver. So there you go. Now, I think most of the people that listen to this would agree with me on that. I hope they would. It's kind of strange. I've taken a lot of different positions on that over the years. I started out not knowing beans about it, like everybody else. And I read David Otis Fuller's Which Bible and True or False. That's what turned me on to Dean Burgeon and Philip Morrow and can't remember. There's another good one that he put some stuff in from. Talking about the Greek text. I could never swallow that any English translation, German translation, Swahili translation was inspired like the originals. Keep that out again. I came close to believing that once. I didn't. It would be nice if we had the original manuscripts, both of the Old Testament and the New. Or if we had copies that we could guarantee were perfect. But men made them. Uninspired men. There are manuscripts out there that are just totally screwed up. There are others that are done beautifully based on what we know. It's one of those things that good brethren should never fall out over. An English translation of the Bible. Good brethren should never fall out over using Greek and Hebrew. I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to name a name, but it was a man that I respected. And I still do, because I'm not sure he still swallows this mess. He had been a professor of Hebrew and Greek. I say that it may have just been Greek. And all of a sudden, he pops up on the King James only side of things, saying such and such a lexicon of the Greek New Testament. He wasn't sure he could use it anymore because it didn't include as a definition of some Greek word the word that the King James Version had translated it by. Now, you know what I told him? I said, brother, if all you want a lexicon to do is tell you the word as the King James translators translated it, what do you need a lexicon for? Don't be foolish. You don't need to look at any of them then. I have read and heard it said that we need to correct the Greek and Hebrew text by what the King James Version has. How ridiculous. It's the height of, I don't know if it's Arminianism or not. I kind of think it is. I can tell you what it is. It's a desire to walk by sight and not by faith. It's craziness. Absolute craziness. I'm going to say one more thing about this, and Lord willing, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to look at something in Galatians 3, I promise. I don't know, when I think about this, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Okay? Seriously now. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. And I believe it's the New International Version. Somebody went through the list of the translators. And lo and behold, they found a homosexual on it. I don't know whether that's legit or not. I know they claim it, and I don't ever remember reading a denial. That doesn't mean there isn't, but just what I remember. And oh my goodness, that version has got to be corrupt from the word go. I mean, it can't be right because there was a homosexual on the translation committee. And yet these same people will venerate the King James Version when it is believed by some that King James, who gave the rules for the translators that they were not to go against, if that version was inspired, then was King James really the Holy Spirit? But King James, it has been said, liked to dress up in women's clothing. And play the part. It's also said he liked little boys. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. But they'll seek to justify that corrupt King of England And they believe that God could use him to set forth inviolate rules for translating the scriptures. But they got a problem with one today. Hypocrites. I know. Some people say King James wasn't that way at all. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It was reported that way. That's that, just what I was getting ready to say, brother. Exactly. That being of the nobility and of a royal family, the latter, his fondness for young boys, would not surprise me one bit. Dressing up in women's clothes, maybe, maybe not. That's hard to say, but that was a common vice among the aristocracy at that time, just like it is today. So, there you go. Manuscripts, I'm glad we got them. Translations of those manuscripts, I'm even gladder that we got them. Listen, don't hide from either truth or error. Now, do you understand what I'm saying? Don't hide from the truth. It's there. Isn't that what the X-Files used to say? The truth is out there. Don't hide from the truth. You all hear that little cat? She's watching the snow fall. Watching the snow fall and hollering. Don't hide from error either. Are you afraid of being something wrong? Are you afraid of something being wrong? Don't be afraid. Some years ago, I almost got cut off at Ruckman. Ruckman that's what it is. Yes, Peter Ruckman. Thank God, couldn't stand his wrath. Bless your heart. He wasn't the first one. He's not going to be the last one. And it's like you got to put blinders on. So you can only look one way. No, let's look every way. See an error in doctrine? Oppose it. See something you agree with? Embrace it. That's why I'm not afraid to read these liberal theologians, modern theologians. If you look on my shelves, and when I get everything arranged in a little better way, I've been thinking about doing a little video tour through my library. You will see I've got as many modern theologians as I do old ones. Maybe more because they write more. I've probably got 20 volumes of Karl Barth, at least 10 of Paul Tillich. I never knew how to pronounce it correctly. Got some Bultmann and others. I'm not ashamed of it. Yeah, I'll read it, man. I found some good things in Tillich, even though he's probably, and I'm going to say this, even though I don't know his heart, he probably lost. He probably wasn't a saved man. I'm not so sure that he really believed in the atonement of Jesus. Because I think Karl Barth really did. But yeah, I've got some good things out of that. Would I recommend you to read them? Not necessarily. If you got a discerning eye, if you think your eye is discerning, yeah, go ahead, read them. Some of it you'll enjoy, some of it's trash. Even in the same book, one chapter will be good, one will be trash. But it's like this on translations of the Bible. The only one that's any good is the King James Version. Baloney. They all have good points. They all have bad points. Remember this, and I think I've mentioned this before. Edward Barber, believed to have written the earliest treatise on baptism by a Baptist in England, supposedly published originally in 1615, but nobody knows where a copy of that is. It was republished later in the 1640s. Personally, I think it may have circulated as a manuscript in the early 1600s. But anyway, he at the end of the book, he's talking about how much money it costs to get a book printed. And he says something to this effect. You know, if I could sell this book and recoup my money and maybe make a little, or if I can get a hold of some money, I want to publish 2 more books. Now, brethren, I can't remember what the other one was, but the one I do remember was a work on the errors of the new version of the Bible. And he's talking about the King James. Our brethren didn't believe that the King James Bible was perfect. They did not believe it was inspired, and it took them many years to get rid of their Genevas and get the King James. And that's not just true with our people, it was true with most separatists, particularly those that were considered a little radical. So there you go. Now that we've spent all that time on manuscripts and what they really mean, I want to mention something else. I haven't looked in my copy of the Martyr's Mirror. Y'all know what that is? It's an Anabaptist martyrology. It's Fox's Book of Martyrs, but for Baptist and Anabaptist. Translated into English, I think, in the late 1700s. Well, Hands of No Leave Society did a translation of it. Henry D'Anvers, in his History of Baptism, makes use of it. I can't remember whether I believe it's the 2nd edition. Makes use of it. Calls it something like the Dutch martyrology. I don't remember exactly the term he used, but that's what he's talking about. It's Martyr's Mirror, what we now call Martyr's Mirror. I'm 90% sure it was in there that some separatists were taken maybe by the Muslims to Thessalonica. And lo and behold, they met people of the church at Thessalonica, and they still had one of the original manuscripts of the Apostle Paul. They claimed it was, anyway. of the letter that he had written them. So it could have been that there were original autograph copies around a lot longer than we thought. I'll try to look that up this week, see if I can find it. I got all these books out here. Man, I got books everywhere right now. Look at this. I got this book. I got that book. I got 4 different Bibles here. I got 2 lexicons. I've got Zerwick. I've got Reinecker Rogers. I've got the hand concordance, all that stuff. Because I was asked if I would elucidate a little more on what our English translation. And notice, brethren, I do this. The King James Version is our English translation. If I could only use one English translation, I'm not sure that would be the one I would use, but for the most part, I think either in a Newberry reference or a companion Bible, I would pick it. Although I'd be really tempted on this Orthodox Study Bible for that it's New King James. So there we go. Question was about that pedagogue, about that schoolmaster. And they asked me if I would talk some more about that, make sure they had it clear in their mind. They understood. I understand. And I'm going to try to do that. So if you got it clear in your mind and you want to turn this off, well, you can. Now, I'm not going to have any I won't have any hard feelings if you turned it off early every day. I'd never know it anyway. I'm going to read it in the King James Version. And then I'm going to read it out of the, I think out of the emphatic diaglott. Verse 24. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. First thing is, strike out that verse or those words to bring us, because they're supplied by the translators and are not necessary. So in English, that translation, King James, it says the law is our schoolmaster unto Christ. New King James, therefore the law was our tutor to Christ. Now, the emphatic diaglott doesn't italicize words that are supplied by the translator. It says the law became our pedagogue to Christ. He doesn't translate the word at all, but he, using Parkhurst's lexicon, that's an old lexicon that I think there's a digital version of it online, if I remember right, defines the word. The word is pedagogue, that's translated schoolmaster. And we look at a schoolmaster as a teacher. And not just necessarily a teacher, but one that's got the rod, that's going to beat you, and he's going to teach you, and he's going to make you do certain things. But that's not what the word signified. We got to get the English schoolmaster out of our head. That's why I called him a guardian. Parkhurst, if this is quoted correctly, it says pedagogos, from pais, a child, and agogos, a leader, which among the Greeks, and you got to remember, Galatia, Gentiles, Greeks, signified a servant whose business it was constantly to attend on his young master, to watch over his behavior, and particularly to lead him to and from school and the place of exercise, gymnasium. These pedagogues were generally slaves, imperious and severe, and so better correspond to the Jewish teachers and Jewish law to which the term is applied by Paul. And I think I read Veronica Rogers to you the last time, but I'm going to read it again. Custodian, male nursemaid. A slave employed in Greek and Roman families to have general charge of a boy in the years from about 6 to 16, watching over his outward behavior and attending him when he went home, as for example, to school. I think it should say from home. See Burton. That's Ernest DeWitt Burton's commentary on Galatians in the International Critical Commentary series. He was a missionary Baptist and a Greek scholar. Also, Mushner, Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, all these other things. My old favorite little lexicon is Souter's Pocket Lexicon. He says this: literally a boy leader, a slave or freeman who attends and guards a boy to and from school, looks after his moral character. He has the governance over that child. He is a governor. Notice everything it says about him is in reference to the outward behavior. Were I to put it in our terms, he's there to make sure the flesh doesn't go astray. He's there to keep him on whatever society says is the straight and narrow. Notice I didn't say what God says is the straight and narrow, but what society says. He's there to conform that child to the behavior to make him a good citizen. Make sure he gets an education. Make sure he gets physical education. Make sure he studies. So he's not a schoolmaster. He's not teaching him that in that regard. The lessons he learns at school are one thing, and the conformity to acceptable behavior is another. And that's what that pedagogue is mainly interested in. Now, well, what's the law good for? Whipping the flesh into a conformity, an outward conformity to what it perceives as the command of God. That's what the law was. It whipped us. It offered us nothing of grace, ability. They just said, get busy, do it, do your duty, get it done, and didn't let you rest till you did it. See, that's the thing. It's what the law was unto Christ. When Christ come, we no longer had need of that pedagogue because he freed us from it. We became free from the law of sin and death. That law could do nothing for us, couldn't make us any better. It could show us our failings. It could whip us into an outward conformity. You know, you go to church on Sunday. If you're a good, moral, religious person, you go to church on Sunday, whether you believe it or not. Go to church on Sunday, whether you're born again or not. You don't go because you got a love of God, the desire to be with his people. You go because it's the right thing to do. No, you're a good legalist. When Christ comes, he shows you the futility of all that. When Christ comes, he shows you no more. Do you need this governor? You got my spirit in you. You've been born from above, and you're a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things become new. All things become lawful to you. Not expedient, but lawful. Because he took the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, that was contrary to us, took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. And I don't know about y'all, but I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life. It's that commandment that was contained in ordinances, contrary to us, now holds nothing over us. Nothing. Don't listen to them folks that's trying to bring you back under it. What I say, don't be afraid of error. No, confront it. Say, if the Son has made me free, I'm free indeed. Free indeed. Brethren, excuse me. I think that anyone that has experienced the terrors of the law see how excuse me, how righteousness, salvation, deliverance could never come by legal means. Never. Think about this. What then? Are we Jews better than they, Gentiles? In no wise. For we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are all together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know. Hey, Paul, everybody listen. Well, you old Baptists supposed to be know-nothings. Well, we're going to know this. Paul says we are. Paul says to the Romans, we know this, and I believe we know it too. You know, we old Baptists are accused of that, aren't we? Y'all know nothings. You don't know anything. You're always hoping. That's right. There are some things we have a hope, and there are other things we know. And we know this. Listen. What things soever the law saith, it saith to them that are under the law. Listen now. That every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. It was asked how the Gentiles were under the law. They were not under the law as a covenant. But Paul, here in Romans 2 and 3, we've been reading from 3. Let's back up to his thing here. You know, he said, we both proved Jew and Gentile under sin. Let's see how he did that too. But there is no respecter of persons with God. That's verse 11. For as many as have sinned without the law shall also perish without the law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. When the Gentiles, which have not the law, talking about the law as a covenant, do by nature the things contained in the law, these, not having the law, are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience bearing them witness, and their thoughts, the meanwhile, accusing or else excusing one another. So there you go. Now, let me give you another one. I'll give you another instance. Gentiles either following the law of nature, obey the law, or don't. God's going to judge them anyway. They're going to perish without the law. Perish. Hey, you conditionalist, if you're listening to this broadcast, think about that. You got all these heathen out here supposedly ignorantly worshiping the true and living God. Bowing down at the juggernaut of Vishnu. Throwing their babies to crocodiles. Oh, but they're sincere. What did he say? Paul, say it again. Tell us again. As many as have sinned without the law shall also perish without the law. They're going to perish. They're not going to be saved. They're going to perish. With them that were the covenant lawbreakers, because the whole world stands guilty before God when we look at his law. Now let me bring you around just a little bit to another group. Another group thought they were just Jews and Gentiles. There's one more. They're sincerely wrong. That's the truth. There's a third group. What group's that? The elect. The elect. The elect stood in Jesus Christ from all eternity, united to him, given to him, and embraced by him in that eternal union as his bride and as his seed. You agree with that? I trust most of you do, not all of you. I trust if you don't, you'll study it, think about it. What was he? He was above the law, wasn't he? He is eternal God, was the lawgiver. But what did it say about him? He was born of a woman, made under the law. And as he was under the law, we, by virtue of our relationship with him, whether we were Jew or Gentile by nature, we're going to be born that way. We were under that law with him. When he was made under the law, we were made under the law, period. Regardless of whether by birth we were going to be an American, an Israelite, a Hottentot, or some kind of wild man from the jungles of Borneo. Doesn't matter. We were made under the law with him. And he fulfilled that law to a jot and a tittle for us. But we had to be shown what it was all about. That's why the Lord brings the law to our conscience as he is dealing with us. Many times, not all the time. I don't believe that God's children have to have anything in an experience other than the revelation of Jesus Christ. But many times he is pleased. I was made to see myself as a lawbreaker. Couldn't think of a commandment that I had not broken, often, with impunity. There you go. I believe that's how we, the elect, whether Jew or Gentile, came under the law by our relationship with Jesus Christ and his relationship to the law and his fulfilling of the law for his children. Does that make sense? Sometimes I know what I want to say, but I can't get it out right. And I'm afraid this is one of those times. Did that make sense? Y'all think about that and any other questions you might have. I'm going to refill my coffee cup.